Welcome to the Redeeming Stories podcast, a space for real, grace-filled conversations about the courage it takes to heal, to reframe our stories, and to redeem the parts of ourselves we once thought were lost. I'm your host, Julie M. Lane, at Redeem Thyself and at Seven Petals, where we explore the daily work of reclaiming worth, releasing what no longer serves us, and coming home to ourselves with compassion. Today, I'm joined by Deborah Mallow, a coach, strategist, motivational speaker, and the author of the book 6 Steps to Fewer Days That Suck. Known as a ray of sunshine, Deborah brings warmth, honesty, and practical wisdom drawn from her own experience with burnout and the slow climb back to joy. Her work, The Daily Decisions, isn't about pretending everything is fine or forcing positivity. It's about small, intentional mindset shifts that help us enjoy more and worry less and break free from the negativity loops that keep us stuck. Deborah's journey mirrors so much of what we talk about here at Redeem Thyself and at Seven Petals, that process of gently confronting old patterns, reframing the inner narrative, and reconnecting with our inner light, and learning to treat ourselves with more kindness, grace, and truth. And because this episode arrives at the start of the new year, it's the perfect moment to talk about fresh beginnings, emotional resets, and the daily choices that help us step into the version of ourselves we've been longing to meet. This is Redeeming Stories podcast, and today we're talking about rediscovering our sunshine, one daily decision at a time. Deborah, welcome.
Just such a pleasure to be here and to ring in the new year with all your listeners and with you. What a joy. Thank you for having me.
You're absolutely welcome. Deborah, do you mind just sharing a little bit personally about yourself?
Sure. I actually started the daily decisions and wrote 6 Steps to Fewer Days That Sucked. Originally, I did the book for me. It was my guidebook, my the help I needed to get myself out of the burnout situation, the negativity loop. And it was just questions, prompts, solutions, strategies, items. It's about people that did the same and got themselves out of a stuck kind of situation. And I backed everything with science because I wanted to understand why, the why behind what I did. I Friends and colleagues noticed the shift in me, that change. I was just happier. I was calmer. I wasn't as angry and just not in the best mood all the time. I just rediscovered my sunshine, so to speak, because we all have it. It's just a matter will we let it shine and sparkle out the way it should. And I felt so much lighter. People, as I mentioned, noticed. And I shared what I did, and they urged me to get it out into the world. So I set on that path to actually bring it to fruition, which definitely is it could be a struggle in itself, but I dealt with it very calmly. And I'm really glad I did because it seems to me that I'm touching a lot of people. Even people are sharing it with their teams because it's just practical, common sense kind of knowledge. But sometimes you just need to be in the right place at the right time to make that shift and then continue on that path of giving yourself grace, accepting yourself, and valuing yourself because that's really what it's about. Because when people are around people that make them feel good, that's what we all crave. So when we feel better, we're able to put that out into the world. So that's a little bit about the why behind what I did. And I come from a world of sales and being the number one sales rep at an iconic brand, and how I really pushed myself to exhaustion and why the burnout. happened in the first place, because especially as women, we tend to take on a lot. And I know you and I have talked about that, Julie.
Hmm. No, absolutely. Then I'm one like you. I do take on a lot. I like lots of pots in the fire. Otherwise, I easily get bored. And so I continue to do that. But I have intentionally now made sure that all of those pots bring me joy.
And that is what we should all intentionally do every day for ourselves. You know, people call it self-care. I call it also valuing ourselves enough to allow ourselves to live the best life we can. That doesn't mean that life won't be messy. Nothing's perfect. There's no magic bullets, but we can control our emotions, our actions, and be kinder to ourselves. And just understand that we're human, to give ourselves grace. And you're doing that
Absolutely.
too.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So often we find ourselves in jobs or in communities that don't enrich us, that don't bring us joy, and yet we feel this obligation to stay in them instead of identifying a pathway out of them, where life is full. I mean, life is so short and it needs to be full of good things. And when we talk, I'm thinking back on careers, my two careers that I've had, and the burnout rate that occurs in them, and knowing that sense of, I just can't do this anymore. I really don't care about this anymore. So when you think back on your own turning point of that burnout, what helped you begin reconnecting with joy rather than just pushing through it?
Well, it actually, I remember it like it was yesterday. And we all do remember these turning points in our lives. For me, as you know, I'm from New York City. I'm Manhattan born and raised. And I was working, as I mentioned, in sales. And even though the accepted amount was to do 6 to 8 calls a day, I would push myself to do 8 to 12 calls a day. And even though I had a car, they provide you with a car when you're in sales, at least at the company I work for. I would choose to use the subway because I got there faster. I didn't have to deal with traffic. I could actually center myself on the subway. But that particular day, there I was standing on the platform, and I was late to a meeting. I always like to be right on time. And the tears just welled up in my eyes. And Julie, I said to myself, if I don't make a change, nothing will ever change. It was my choice to shift how I actually acted each day, or what I expected of myself each day, to set boundaries, to make life more joyous for me, because I really did enjoy the connection. It was a joy to talk to the people in the offices. It really was. It was all that extra pressure I put on myself. Nobody else put that pressure on me, but I did. And we tend to do that. We think people are judging us. People are too busy in their own lives to necessarily take time to judge us. And even if they do, what does it matter? We have to learn to accept ourselves, not to look at that one or two things that happen in a day that don't meet our maybe unrealistic expectations, but to look at, even make a list of the many things we do in a day that are wonderful.
Hmm.
The kindness we share with people. There's so many things that we need to feel more blessed about than constantly worrying, and that circular thinking and all that negativity that then becomes a block and stops us from enjoying the day. So that was the pivot point in my life. And that's when, like I told you, I started to write the book, which was my personal guidebook to make that shift. And everybody needs to do it in their way. But when you realize that you feel so stuck and you're not joyous anymore, we need to do something about it.
Absolutely. So I think, finding those routines that work for you is so important. And for the many years of trauma and abuse that I've been through and boundaries disrespected, I never had the opportunity to decide what works for me. It was always about how to keep my head down, how to not rock the boat, and in being mom and dad to my daughters, they always took priority in raising them. And even though they're now in their 30s, they have families of their own, they're amazing, their husbands are wonderful. I'm still having a hard time figuring out what works for me. And I've had to go back and create a wake up routine. And what does that look like for me when I wake up in the morning? And especially when I still struggle significantly with trauma dreams, and so my mornings are really hard to shake off and get going on. So finding that everyday routine. So Deborah, so much of your work emphasizes this reframing of how we approach life. Um, so what are your actual gentle mindset shifts like on an everyday basis for you?
Is I try to flip the script. I try to talk to myself, and I do talk to myself like you would talk to a friend, to somebody that you care about. And I don't let the negative in. Julie, I stopped worrying because I think we talked about this before. I read a study, a Penn State study, that researchers found that participants, 91% of what they worried about never happened. And so I just trained myself to distract myself. When a circular thought comes into my head, or I start to worry, or fear takes over, or that negativity bias, just that we tend to focus, just as humans, focus more on the negative than the positive, I flip the script. And instead of like saying, I have to get everything done, I say to myself, what actually matters today and what can wait? I also, I don't term or use the word failure. And I write that in my book too. I call it education and growth because mistakes are part of life. And how else are we going to learn what is good for us, what works for us, what we're good at, unless we make those mistakes to actually learn and get better? How many people bat a thousand the first time out? It's just not practical or possible. We need to, as we talked about before, look at the positive things we do. So my big thing is flip the script, ditch the habit. And I call it out in my book in the call outs on every double page because again, take the leap instead of letting fear take over. Because when we make a small shift, our brains, as you know, Julie, our brains love and thrive on patterns. So,
Mm-hmm.
honestly and truthfully, the more we make these small micro shifts and we do it over time, it becomes a more positive habit that stick. And I always say, don't discredit the strategy until you try it. Try it, do micro shifts, flip the script instead of going negative, and those small changes over time can make a big difference in how we feel. And I'm a testament to that, really, because if you had seen me before, I would get angry at the littlest thing. But that wasn't serving me. As we talked about, what serves us? If it doesn't serve you, you owe it to yourself to slowly make the shift. Don't overwhelm yourself. Not you, just anybody,
Right.
and try to do everything at one time. That's why New Year's resolutions really don't work. It's
Mhm.
make or don't work many times because we can't overhaul everything in one fell swoop. We need to do it slowly because then it registers and then it becomes a pattern over time that we thrive rather than just, I don't want to say survive, but rather than go negative.
Absolutely. And it's finding that foundational piece that almost has to be changed first before we can make all the other changes. And, we all know, I've heard the saying, it takes 30 days to create a habit, and you need to give yourself that time to create even that foundational shift. And as you were talking, there were a couple things that came to mind for me. And one is that phrase, fake it until you make it. You just got to keep doing what is accurate, what you want to be doing in order to get rid of what was. And as an educator too, I often talk to my graduate students about it's not just learning from your mistakes, it's learning from what works too, because we can always make things better. And even though it's working, could it be better? Could we refine it further to make it better? Whatever that may be.
Exhaustion because just like in the four agreements, everybody's best, it's different each day. So what we have to just be kind to ourselves when it comes to what we expect from ourselves. Sure, strive
Hmm.
to do your best. I'm all for that, but also know when to give yourself some grace and not push yourself so hard. Sometimes we just need a little space, a pause to be able to get back to center or to feel like things are moving in the right direction because I find so many times we're harder on ourselves than other people, what other people expect from us. And
Hmm.
it we really need to be kind to ourselves because I think that's when we thrive the most, when we're kind to ourselves and we give ourselves grace and we strive to do our best, yes, but we don't make ourselves crazy trying to
Right.
do it. Because that's, I think, so many times it's the pressure we put on ourselves. And that's when we rob our joy because we get stuck in our head and we get stuck maybe in things that, do we really need to do this? Sometimes it's better just to stop and do something that's going to bring the joy because sometimes when you pause, and you're not actively doing, you're doing something else, and that's when the genius might happen or the thoughts,
Right.
the best ideas might happen too. So again, that's, I think, my biggest shift was I'm kinder to myself and I let myself be. I strive, yes, but I also know when to let myself take a little break. That doesn't mean I'm giving myself excuses to stop something and not get it done. I'm just being kind to myself so that maybe I can, like you said, do it even better.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, in the time that we have left, Deborah, can you share, your book, Six Steps for Fewer Days That Suck? That came out of real life experiences. So, what do you hope readers carry with them after going through those steps, especially women juggling stress, expectations, and the pressure to keep it all together?
So, my hope is that readers will walk away with the knowledge that they are not powerless in shaping how they feel day to day. Stress, expectation, all the spinning plates won't magically disappear, they'll still be there, but it's how we approach it, how we deal with it. And I want women especially to know that they don't need to earn rest. We were just talking about that. To earn self acceptance, their joy, compassion, they need to protect their energy and set boundaries that support our well being and reconnect with our sunshine, who we really are. We don't need to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders. So, my goal is that readers, women, teens, that they feel a little lighter and a little more grounded and more on their own side, like they're their best friend. And then if they do, my work is done because I set the path. I gave them some strategies to be able to actually step into more sunshine. I don't like to say best life because yes, we're all striving for joy, and but we have to remember that, and like I said it at the beginning, life is messy. We will get these curveballs, but having strategies and ways to deal with things, keeping ourselves calm, pausing, not reacting, but pausing and responding, not just letting emotions take over. Life will be so much easier. And that's honestly what I hope people will gain from Six Steps to Fewer Days That Suck. And as you know, it's set in double pages of all the things that we struggle with. So it's not like a book that you could read pieces of it. And then at the end of each step, there's a line page with the summary. So you can take notes or jot down pages that resonate most and will help you most. I did it sort of as a workbook to inspire people that they can make little shifts that will make big changes over time. So they will be not happiest, but happier.
Wonderful, Deborah. Thank you so much. So, as we close our conversation today, I've been thinking about how healing begins with the smallest of choices and the ones that we often overlook. We need those decisions to pause, to step back, and not to constantly be in this rush mode. So, to reframe instead of spiral, and to show ourselves kindness and instead of criticism. So today, Deborah reminded us that we don't need perfect days to experience peace. We just need fewer days that drain us and more moments that anchor us. This is the heart of At Redeem Thyself and at Seven Petals as well, that redemption isn't a single breakthrough, but a series of gentle shifts. Those we can start at the first of the year in very small steps or even today. One thought, one boundary, one self-honoring decision at a time. So whether you're entering this new year hopeful or hesitant, energized or exhausted, may you remember that your perspective is powerful, your inner narrative is changeable, your joy is reclaimable, and your story is still redeemable. So thank you, Deborah, for your light, your honesty, your heart for helping others reconnect with their own sunshine. And thank you, listeners, for sharing this space. Until next time, this is Redeeming Stories Podcast. And may your daily decisions lead you closer to truth, closer to peace, and closer to the version of yourself you're already becoming every day.